Hey guys, it is I. Welcome to Being Becca Live, you guys. Couple minutes late because um, I always think when I'm getting ready to do a live stream, like, oh, I have so much time. It's just the computer's right there, or I just need to do this and then I'll be ready to do the live stream. No problem, right? Wrong. Oh, I always leave myself like crappy time. And I think that's part of the executive functioning time management thing that happens with autism. We always think something takes us this amount of time, but in reality, it actually takes us a little bit longer. So, anyway, here I am with you guys. Back here on Being Back Alive, which is where we talk about on a weekly basis the challenges of being an adult alive right now with autism, or being an autistic adult alive right now, however you want to say it. But that's what we talk about, and not when the research catches up, because that's lame. So we are doing it now while we're alive and trying to be better at being us. So welcome to it. I don't know, the camera angle feels weird to me when I'm in the living room. It's so funny. Like, I'm just so used to it being a certain way with a certain kind of lighting. Anyway, hi Burnett. Hey Bill. Thank you guys for hanging in and joining me. I appreciate it. This week, another challenging week coming up for me, and kind of in the middle of it. Oh, look, Schmidt. Do you see him? Oh, and that was Kitty Cat that just jumped over there. So maybe it's a little fun for me to do it in this room. Hey, Bernard, because everybody comes to say hi. The dogs, though, are outside because they're driving me crazy today. In any case, what is there to talk about this week? I mean, I have a bunch of stuff going on for me, but I am going to be traveling next week. For the first time in a very long time, for the first time since before COVID. Antonio and I are actually going to be heading back to New York to visit fam for a very few bits. Hey, Joe, good morning, and or afternoon, or whatever it is for you. And then I also have, a whole bunch of stuff on deck that I have to get done. It's sort of the end of the month passed, and I'm in that beginning of the month, and I'm late with the newsletter. I'm late with asking Spectrum Women. I'm late with some things here, you guys. Not that late because it's still the first week in October, and I try to be kind to myself about getting things out within the first week or so, not the very first day. So, morning, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining me. And so that's sort of what I've been up to, is sort of preparing for that and thinking about, again, still this transition of what's going on in my life and how to, I don't know, I just need to get through it, right? It's been one transition after another. Oh, I am moving and shaking. I'm sorry. Um, it's been one transition after another for me, one sort of um, kind of schedule change after another. And I'm starting to really feel that the results of all of that right now. And so I'm kind of looking forward, even though I'm not really a big champion of going back to New York. It's not my thing. It's a sensory challenge, of course, and then it's travel and being away from the animals and all of the things and the money and all the stuff that goes along with it. But I'm going to try to remember to have a good time while I'm there, because I do miss the food a lot. So I have a list for Antonio and I of the places I want to go eat while we're in New York. And that's really, that's my focus of the trip right now. And a few other things, of course. But yeah, I am sort of getting anxious about that, hoping that I can clear my plate of some of these end of the month things before I head there, and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's coming up. I also just did, the September seminar series, and I'm going to be putting together the October one shortly. It feels like it comes up on me so fast. I don't know. But I got to start thinking about that, because I want to talk about time management and spoon management next month. So it's going to be an important one. I highly recommend that you take this one. If any of the ones that you take, time management, I know, is a huge issue for us on the spectrum, and so is spoon management and kind of avoiding shutdowns, meltdowns, all that fun stuff. So we definitely need to talk about that stuff this month when I do the seminar. And that's, kind of what's going on for me. In terms of today's topic, though, I have one I want to talk about, but I'm not sure how it's all going to come out, which is kind of how I always do my live streams with you guys. It's like, here's the topic, here's where I'm at thinking about it. And then sometimes as I'm talking to you, I become aware of new parts of it and kind of, it kind of unfolds in that beautiful way. What I wanted to talk to you about today is dissociation. And I know that I probably talked about it before in bits and pieces. I know I talked about intrusive thoughts before, but I want to talk about dissociation in a really specific way. In other words, can dissociation be used for good? What? Yeah, so as many of you know, if you suffer with dissociation, and it comes along not just with autism, it comes with a lot of anxiety disorders. Many of the personality disorders get dissociation. It's sort of a it's just a mental health symptom, right? And it's part of many of the parts of mental health, many of the diagnoses and all of this the kind of thing. So it's not specific to autism, but as autistics, we definitely do dissociate, right? And what it's sort of what most folks believe the trigger to be is high stress. So when you're feeling really stressed, whether it's physically or mentally or both, right, your brain kind of goes, wait, this is too much, I need a moment, and you sort of detach a little bit. And so dissociation can be something that lasts for a few moments. It can be something that comes and goes for a longer period, right? But it's definitely what we believe is that it's triggered by stress and overwhelm. So no wonder, right, autistics get dissociation as we become sensory overloaded or become overwhelmed by our social circumstances, whatever the case may be. And so it's something that I think happens to us a lot. And the first time it happens to you, it can be really scary, right? It can feel like somebody like put drugs in your drink or something. It feels super weird when you detach from your physical space and you feel your physical body rather, and you feel more like you're watching yourself or watching your life from far away. Right? I do too, Burnett. And so hang on. I dissociate frequently at work also, and I'm about to talk about it. So hang on to your chair before I have to go out there and yell at these dogs. I can't believe they're going to make me stop my live stream and go yell at them. Okay. Anyway, so what I want to talk about in terms of dissociation is that we do this dissociation, and that's where we believe it to come from and all of this stuff. Well, if you dissociate often, right, you kind of get used to it and you know what's happening and you know it'll pass and you just sort of sit through it momentarily. And if you start to learn your triggers for dissociation, maybe you can do something about what's triggering the dissociation in the first place. And that's a whole other conversation. We can talk about that another time. If you're interested, let me know. I'll do a live stream on that, what we can do to sort of prevent and kind of get through dissociative states. But what I want to talk about today is dissociation as a healthy coping mechanism. I think that's what I want to call it. Why, Becca? How could you possibly say that? It's such a terrible thing when it happens. Well, no, not all the time. And if you're somebody that dissociates a lot, I think it serves a purpose. And so I'm trying to understand, because I in times of stress for sure, but more so in times of overload or full plates or something like that, I've learned that dissociation can be helpful. And I don't know how else to describe it except for to describe my experience of that. Okay, so you know how people who can talk a lot about lucid dreaming and that they can train their brains to be kind of conscious in their dream state and control their dreams a little bit. Well, in that realm, I feel like now that I understand dissociation, where it comes from, how it's happening, what's going on, and that I've had it for such a long time, I can sort of dissociate on command, if that makes sense. So like sometimes I'm really conscious of the fact that I dissociate and I can learn to enjoy that period, right? So in a dissociation now, instead of feeling fear while that's happening, which because I know it happens and I know it'll pass and I know it's going to happen again because it's been so many times now, I've learned to sort of look at everything while I'm in there, if that makes sense. So sort of to look at everything and like what's going on and sort of what does it look like from the outside and whatever that may be, and sort of it's kind of like another state of consciousness almost. And so it's like I have this awareness, oh, I'm dissociating, nothing bad is going to happen, so what else can I notice from this experience, right? And the other thing that I've noticed too is that when I'm under a lot of stress and anxiety, if I kick into a dissociative state, of course, when I'm safe, not when I'm driving, not when I'm doing something with sharp objects or whatever, but if I do dissociate, I can, as a writer, I use that state often as a way to think through some of my writing ideas, or maybe something we're talking about, or something that is such a very internal conversation. And so a lot of times what I find is that when I'm really anxious, which happens for me most in the workplace, Burnett, that I do dissociate when I'm feeling stressed by things. And I know it's my brain going, this is too much. I need to step back from it a little bit. And it's sort of protecting me from the stress of the moment and doing its job. And I've noticed that I will kick into it when I'm having a stressful time, but I'm doing something doing like a repetitive task. So if I'm feeling really stressed and I start to play with a fidget toy that's very repetitive, right? I can dissociate using those tools. And it feels sort of like the way that a dream can feel like an escape from your reality, right? It takes like the edges off of your reality, the harshness of the noise or the lights or whatever, or the conversation maybe that's near you that's too loud or whatever it is. And so I've sort of learned to use this dissociative state almost like earplugs and sunglasses, sort of, in a sense, when I'm in certain situations. And other times I'm like, if I'm in that dissociative state, I'll be like, okay, well, maybe this is an idea for a piece, or maybe, I start to think about the things that I'm otherwise maybe feeling creative about, or pensive about, or worried about. And I kind of am able to shut out sort of the world for a little bit and almost compartmentalize just what's happening in here. And so yes, Nancy says I purposely dissociate too. That's what I think I'm doing anyway. Right. Because nobody talks about consciously dissociating, right? Nobody talks about choosing to dissociate. We often talk about how it comes upon people. And so because of that, it's like, do I call it dissociation? Can I call it that? But that's what it feels like to me. And it's sort of like an escape almost, right? It's a relief in that moment. I do want to bring this conversation, though, with a warning, which is that you can learn to rely on that dissociation in an unhealthy way, right? And often folks slip into a dissociative state, or very long periods of dissociative state, if they become reliant on dissociation. So if every time you're feeling stress, you're like dissociate, 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 right? It'll stop working in the positive way and begin to work in a negative way as a negative coping mechanism, right? But I'm talking, yes, Burnett, yes, but I'm talking about this feeling of like everything on the outside just feels like too much, right? And so we go, oh, I just need to like pop out for a second here. And if I'm at work and I'm doing, this is the other part of it that I enjoy, is if I'm at work, I really, I don't mind doing repetitive tasks like folding laundry, or, putting things away in the right places, or cleaning, or that kind of stuff, because in those moments, I can consciously dissociate, do the task that I need to be doing, right? But because it doesn't take that much thought, I can then dissociate and think about the stuff that I really care about, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to describe that except to say it's like consciously dissociating. And so I want to have this conversation about, is it conscious dissociating? Should we call it something else? Can you do it too? Which obviously some of you can, right? And when are we using it? Are we using it for good? Are we using it as a crutch? What are we using it for? And can we find some places in our lives where it's actually helpful and healthy, right? And so for me, in some of those overload situations, it certainly feels helpful and healthy. And when I'm doing a repetitive task and it allows me to have creative thought or bigger thoughts about things I care about, it also feels healthy, because when else do I have that solitude to do that, right? Unless I've made it a point to schedule in solitude, right? And so I've learned to use dissociation when I'm doing tasks that I don't really necessarily enjoy and that don't require a lot of brain space, right? So that I can get through those tasks, but also focus on things I care about. And it's that multitasking ability that I feel like is the part of it that's related to the autism. Like, oh, you need me to do this. Like, we learn to do the thing people need us to do, but then we learn to detach and compartmentalize so we can think about the stuff we care about also, right? And so that's the part that, I don't know. I still don't have the right terms for it. It's certainly not coming from any kind of literature or any kind of DSM diagnosis. It's just coming from my raw experience and something I wanted to really explore with you guys, because here's a skill, right? Conscious dissociating that I've learned through trauma and over the course of time of some very negative experiences. But can I now use that skill set in a positive scenario, much like I talk about how we can use masking sometimes to make it use less spoons, right? If we can consciously mask, right? Can we consciously dissociate? And if so, when I'm talking about conscious dissociation, it almost makes me think about, right, meditation and silent meditation and the out of body experiences that people have when they do silent meditation, right? They do feel that detachment from body. And is that related? Probably. Don't have enough money to do any kind of research on the stuff that I'm certain is related. But you know, that's the kind of scenario. So yes, like Bernard says, sometimes I disappear miles into my body, which is something I can't control. Yes, and that's the kind of dissociative state, Bernard, that we are most commonly talk about, is the one where we disappear so far into ourselves that we're no longer kind of in reality anymore, right? We're no longer a part of what's happening to our physical body. And that's the dissociation that I feel like we commonly talk about. We can't control it, blah, 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 all of that stuff, right? But yes, and Bernard said right before that, I suspect this is why I take a book with me whenever I leave the house, because I have to disappear in certain situations. Yes, and what I found, and I've always been that way too, Bernard. I am the carrier of books. Until we had cell phones, I carried a book everywhere I went for exactly this reason. Now I have a cell phone and I use that for exactly this reason most of the time, right? That's my typical choice. But sometimes you're in a scenario where you need to be doing things with your hands, and so you can't read a book and you can't read your phone and you can't do those things. And so when I'm doing those things that take manual labor and I can't use my hands, I find that this conscious dissociation does the same job. Do you understand? It does the same piece that those things do, right? Because sometimes it is truly unpleasant to be in our bodies when we are sensory sensitive and the environment is being as such, or perhaps we're surrounded by people who do things that drive us crazy, or folks we don't necessarily like, right? And so it can be an overload and an invasion into our personal space, thoughts, feelings, all of it. And I find, and sometimes you're in those scenarios and you can't get out of them, right? So sometimes I'm at work and maybe someone has BO, or maybe they're having a conversation that's really loud, or maybe a dog's barking that won't stop. But whatever it is, right? It's this, oh, I need to put a shield up, sort of, to, like, it's too much. And I don't have the choice of, let me go run and get headphones, let me put on my sunglasses, let me read a book, let me grab my phone. I can't do those things. So is this a fair choice? And that's what I throw out to you guys today. I want to know if you too think it's a fair choice, and if you too kind of have this ability to consciously dissociate, because I don't know what else to call it. And do you use it in a healthy way sometimes, right? Or are you reliant on it solely in an unhealthy way? Like, let's peel it apart, because our brains are doing it to us on purpose because it's saving us something, right? It's like, flight or fright or flight, right? It's not necessarily a pleasant state to be in, but it serves a purpose. And the same thing goes for our meltdowns and shutdowns and all of this. And so the original purpose for dissociation was exactly that. It was this protection from everything is too stressful, too much. I can't handle it. Here, take a break for a second, get it all together, and now I can put you back. You know what I mean? And so I want to think about all of those pieces and components, but it sounds like, yes, Taz, dissociation is a trauma response, but it's not controllable when it is a trauma response. And that's what I'm trying to say, right? So there is the most common dissociation that we talk about is a trauma response, right? We do it to protect ourselves, to save ourselves from a situation that is too much, right? And all of that. But my question is, can we use it for good? Can we use it? Can we say, yes, I learned this as a trauma response, but can I now utilize it in a conscious way that isn't a trauma response? Can I? I think that I figured out how to, but I'm not 100% sure. And then I'm just me. And so that sucks. That's not really helpful in terms of information. I need to know if you guys do it too, like if it's just me, I'm an anomaly, and that's not helpful, right? And so what I want to know is if it's happening for you guys out there, and what it's starting to look like is it is, and we're all kind of experiencing in a different way. So what I would like to say to you guys is think about this for me, right? Are we using dissociation only in a negative way? Can we kind of take back our power with it and use it sometimes for good? Are there times that it can be a positive choice when we don't have other choices, right? And in other words, is it not a throw the baby out with the bathwater situation? Like, of course, we want to process our trauma, and we don't want to relive our traumas over and over and over again, right? And all of that stuff, and we want to healthily process our traumas. But do we have to throw away the skill sets and the lessons that we've learned from all of that trauma? And I say no, right? I say it serves a purpose. So now can we kind of harness the power that it has? Can we harness it in a positive way and use it to help ourselves? That's where I'm at with that whole conversation. I would love to know what you guys think about that beyond just here. Oh, yes, Joe, it can feel similar. I'm sorry I missed it. It can feel similar to a seizure to some people, especially if it's the first time that it's happened to you. You do, because when you have that seizure, you do, that dissociation is often the beginning stage before the body goes into the actual seizure itself. And so that prodromal phase, I think that's the right word, is kind of what dissociation can feel like to people. It feels a little different, of course, for all of us. But yes, when you're not when you're not kind of, you don't know yet and you've just begun your research of this experience, it can definitely appear, sound, and read like an absent seizure. I think I could see where that would happen. So do some research on dissociation, Joe, and tell me if when you read about dissociation you go, oh, this is what it is. Let me know, right? Curious, because I bet you there are other people out there who think they're having absent seizures and might just be dissociating, or vice versa, right? Important to talk about. In any case, I would love to hear from you guys. I love hearing from you right here in chat, but I also love hearing from those of you who miss it live and manage to catch it afterwards. So please leave me your comments wherever you're watching this video. I would love your feedback on this topic. I think it's a super interesting one, and I'm sort of in the middle of it all, as I always am when I throw topics out at you, trying to figure out where I stand with it, because I don't know it all. And if I did think that, I think it'd be somebody to avoid. And I don't think I know it all. I want to know what you guys are experiencing too. So on that note, I say go out there and think about this stuff. Let me know what you're thinking. You can comment wherever you're seeing the video, but of course you can always reach out to me on social media. You can email me directly at info@beccalaurie.com. That's LORY.com. Or you can go to the webpage, which is beccalaurie.com, and you can use the contact page there. It sends an email directly to me. And while you're there, of course, check out my social media, the Ko-Fi page, the Redbubble store, and of course, the course is on there, and the seminars is on there, and all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, do a little thinking about this conscious dissociation. I'm going to call it that until I have something better. And so let's think about that and where that's taking us. I will be back here on Sunday for the next Growing Gratitude. And of course, I'll be back next Wednesday with the next Being Becca Live. Yay. Until then, you guys, I will see you out and about on the interweb. And of course, I always, always, always appreciate your thumbs up more than anything, your shares, your subscriptions, all of that means a ton to me. So please keep showing me your love, because otherwise I have to sit and think about this stuff by myself. And I don't want to. So I'm so glad to have you guys share some time and energy with me, and of course some spoons. Get out there with the rest of your day and seek joy, create joy, share joy, all the joys. And I will see you on Sunday for Growing Gratitude. Bye, guys.